Hello, I'm Luke Fosberg, and I'm here to tell you about my senior thesis film, which was entitled Green Ink. Now, you may be wondering where the title Green Ink comes from. I thought of it when I was almost done editing it, because most of the film was shot on location in Greenwich, and then ink as the letters were handwritten, and I thought that Green Ink, Greenwich, kind of sounds similar. So I thought that was an interesting parallel to draw, and that it would be an interesting title, because the working title just would not have been very interesting. The pre-production process for Green Ink began last semester when I began working on a script for my pre-production class, and the script was written solely by me, and I didn't fully anticipate it to be something that I would carry on with, but it turned out that it worked well for this project, so I carried it through. It went through multiple rewrites, but I'm happy with the way that the script ended up and with the way that the project wound up. The film stars my good friend David Lawrence as the main character David, and I play the character of Alex. The main story revolves around a pen pal that David had when he was going to Pace University. Now, she had some type of problem going on at home and wound up cutting off all communication with David, and David was somewhat upset with this, and as a result, he was unable to complete any of his work and wound up having to drop out of school. And we find him when he's at the end of his rope and completely alone. He's completely cut himself off from his one good friend, Alex, and Alex is in a similar situation to David. And the two go on an adventure to try and figure out what happened with this girl who suddenly stopped answering. The film was shot solely on my iPhone 12 Pro Max in the app Filmic Pro, which is an app that pretty much turns your phone into a DSLR, which made filming very easy. In terms of hardware, aside from that, I have a DJI Osmo Mobile 2 gimbal, along with this tripod, which I use for a lot of these stills. And the Osmo Mobile itself is very useful in terms of tracking shots because it stabilizes your phone. So that was the main hardware that I used. I also rented audio equipment from media services. In terms of inspiration for this film and my works in general, most of them come from my personal experiences. This one did to some extent. And in terms of film influences, I have posters all over my wall that I look at constantly that just remind me of who I pull from in terms of my experience. One of my favorite movies being Good Will Hunting and Forrest Gump, as well as movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think that John Hughes is an absolute genius, and he ran the 80s and made some of the most iconic movies of all time, so how could I not love him? The film was mainly shot as a two-man crew, and when I say crew, I mean me working the camera or setting it up, and then my friend who was the actor. It made it quite difficult to have more dynamic camera angles. It made it kind of difficult to vary shots early on because it was just the two of us, so we didn't have somebody who could move the camera. But later into the production, near the end of shooting, we were able to get a third member onto our crew who was able to use the camera and monitor audio, which made things a lot easier in terms of recording and shooting, because it gave us all more freedom in terms of camera angles that we could use. This can mainly be seen in the driving montage that takes place towards the end of the film, as this was mainly shot all in one continuous action, which would not have been possible in any way had we done it as a static shot. There were definitely some hiccups along the way. I had an actor pull out just probably a day into shooting, I believe it was. He just stopped getting back to us, and luckily we didn't need him for any of the shots early on, so crisis avoided on that one, but I definitely got lucky when it came to that. There were some interesting methods when it came to shooting. My favorite, which I'll put on the screen right now, which was an apparatus that we used in order to get the steady shot that you see in this scene. My windshield is so low that the only way that we could get it to mount was to attach it to that little suction cup thing and then tape it to it because it was broken. Luckily, I didn't throw it out when it broke a couple months ago, because if I did, then I would have been in some trouble when it came to getting a shot like that. And my favorite shot is one right here. Because the story behind it is very interesting. We only had 2 people there that day, so I had my lead actor holding the camera at the beginning, and then I had him signal me. Shee! That signal meant that I was out of the shot, which meant I could sprint back into the back of the car and then start pulling the camera back in a dolly-like fashion, even though we didn't have an actual dolly. But again, thanks to the gimbal that we used, it was very easy to get steady shots. That's about all I have in talking about my film Green Ink. I hope you enjoy it, and that's me.